On this week's episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing Cheryl Evans. Cheryl's been a friend of mine. I've known her for years. She is now board president at Project Light of Manatee, and she's going to share with you a little bit about her trajectory, how she became kind of an accidental board chair, board president, and what she's been able to accomplish in a very short period of time. So join me in my interview with Miss Cheryl Evans. Hey, I want to jump in real quick. Somebody asked me the other day, what does the Corley Company do? Well, we do three things for nonprofits. One, we facilitate meetings, yes, like board retreats where we discuss governance and strategy with all the members of the board. Number two, advise CEOs and help them as they make decisions and implement actions to drive their mission. And then finally, we produce podcasts such as this one, but also for a number of nonprofits to help you get the word out, get your message out. So if you're interested in any of these services, please feel free to reach out to Michael at thecorleycompany.com. Now back to the podcast. I'm excited today to interview an old friend of mine, Cheryl Evans. Cheryl is the president of the board for Project Light of Manatee, which has really been an opportunity, a challenging opportunity for her. And she's really become quite successful in this role. I'm excited to talk to her today a little bit about her experience and that we can all learn from. But Cheryl, thank you for coming. If you would you please share with our audience a little bit about yourself and how you became president of the board at Project Light of Manatee?
Well, Mike, thank you so much for having me today. I really do appreciate being with you. And it is kind of a strange story. I worked with a friend of mine in Manatee County, and she had retired, and she kept saying, you have to go to this board. You have to be on this board. You'd be so good on this board. And it was for adults to learn English. And I've always been a nonprofit fan, but mainly of like nonprofits for children. So I worked in that area when I came to Florida about 13, almost 14 years ago. I worked in the nonprofit part of educating children. And I did that for a long time. Then I jumped into the Manatee County School District and worked there in admin as the parent educator for Title I for a few years. And I just felt the pull of nonprofit. And instead of going back into working in the nonprofit, I thought, well, this might be the time to listen to my friend and go see what it's all about. And so I did. I went to meet the president at the time. His name's Charlie. And I met the executive director, and I sat there and I listened, and they kind of interviewed me and they talked between themselves. And I thought, first of all, I was missing the mark in nonprofit education, where I was always going for children. And somehow we give so much money to children and help children. But Michael, what happens to children when they become middle schoolers or high schoolers, right? You know that they need stability. And so if you have children out there that had a great start, but they're in middle school or high school and they've lost stability, they go and find it someplace else, and probably not a very good place. But if we can educate their parents, and you know how many immigrants there are in Manatee and Sarasota County. So if we can educate their parents, teach them English, teach them how to navigate society, how to get the green card, how to work, how to fill out an application, and more importantly, how to support their child in the educational school system, then we have these kids, or provided these kids support for the rest of their life. And that to me was the key element. And I hopped right on board and was immediately made the vice president. I'm sure you can't tell why.
Oh, I love it. The passion is there. It's clear that you were mission driven. And I love that, Cheryl. And these are just contributing members of society that you're helping out. So talk a little bit about, so you start off as vice chair. Well, wow. Right. And then you evolve to president of the board. So chair of the board. So can you talk a little bit, how long were you vice chair? How long have you been on the board? How did it come about to you becoming president? And then we're going to talk a little bit into what you've learned in that role.
Okay. So when I first came on, there was no vice president, and I was asked to take on that role. And as I was looking at structure. So one thing that I did when I retired from education was I started a couple businesses. And when you start businesses, what you figure out is that you have to have structure, right? And as I was looking at this organization, there was a lack of structure.
Hmm.
And so I said I would take this on. And yes, I would do marketing and branding, was kind of what they wanted me for. But we had to put some structure in place. Like we need some rules and regulations. We needed to have an updated strategic planning session. I mean, we needed to update the website. It still had board members on there from I don't know how long ago. So I felt like if I was going to do this, that we all had to be on the same page and that we had to move forward. We had to do that. And then I quickly learned in this process so I worked closely with the president of the board, closely, and we started creating things that was really good. And it was lots of working together. And what we found was that there were some board members that were on the board. I mean, I'll just say it, probably not for the right reasons, right? Like they were there to promote their business. And I really needed, and Charlie really needed, people that were as strongly mission based and vision based as we were. And so we started going out together and trying to find people to join the board. Charlie then became not well.
Oh.
So it was about, I don't even know, it was over a year ago. He called me up and he said, I'm stepping down for personal reasons and I need to get healthy and I need you to do this and I need you to step up and you're the right person for the job, and all of that stuff. And so I said, okay, I'll do it, but I'll do it for 6 months. So I'll be an interim for 6 months and we'll see how it goes because I needed the ED to work with me. If I was losing Charlie, I needed the executive director to work with me. And so I needed to test the waters there. So after 6 months, and we seemed to swim pretty well together, then I accepted the formal position. So I've been in the position for about a year and a few months.
Oh, very good. And I like you recognizing the importance of the board chair having that relationship with the executive director. That is absolutely critically important because that could that is probably one of the most critical success factors to a nonprofit is that relationship between those two. So as you've become president of the board, what have been your biggest opportunities, biggest challenges? I know you've had to build out the board, add board members, and put some structure in. So as you took over, what have you worked towards accomplishing?
Well, we have a strategic plan.
Yay.
And it has to be updated because we have checked the boxes off on them. So one of the things was like to have classes outside of the building.
Oh.
And so we have classes outside of the building now. One of the other things was to get a big, large grant that would sustain us for 3 years and our growth in the organization. So the Baranczyk Foundation has stepped up and they provided us a 3-year kind of structured, grant to help us build and grow in the organizations in the way that we want to. So those are the boxes that we've checked off. We don't need to call in volunteers. We can hire teachers now. So that was a big thing on our strategic plan. So that to me has been so much success is now we're going to write a strategic plan. And where are we going now? Where do we go? And it's kind of like the world is your oyster at this point because I don't feel restricted in any way. So do we do a parenting thing for parents? Do we do parent and children opportunities for families? Do we build on family literacy? That is exciting to me, and that the vision of the future is where we're going. But I'll tell you what, the hardest thing to do for me was to get board members. that was the hardest thing. And it's so funny because you have a circle, right? A circle of friends. You go to your
Right.
circle of friends and you knock on their doors, and then you ask them if they have any friends. And then you think you've done it all, right? Like I'm texting you and saying, I got nobody. And I think in two sentences you said to me, with your personality, you got to get out there and you have to meet people and you have to greet people. And I thought, okay, he's right. And I know more people than I think I do. I've had contact with people way more than I thought I had. And so I just started doing that, and just going to things and meeting people and talking to people. I looked at the donor list also.
Very smart.
And I thought, who's consistently donating? Who one of our board members was a student at Project Light,
That's wonderful.
and he's now a donor. And I thought, well, why is he not on the board? And he is now. So, but yeah, it's when you think that you have you're at your very last straw, you're hanging by a string, you're really not. You just have to go so far out of that box, and you have to call on the people that you believe in, that you've had contact with, that you know will guide you in that right direction.
Very good. And your passion comes through, and that you exude passion for the mission. And I tell you what, that's a huge selling point when you're out looking for board members. So I really commend you for the work you've done on that, Cheryl. So let's evolve the conversation a little bit. I'm curious how you have structured your board meetings. You've got a relatively new board, or of course it's ever evolving. You're relatively new. How have you approached board meetings?
Well, I thought I wanted to be like really fun. I was going to be the fun girl, and I was going to bring in treats, and we were going to eat and we were going to drink. It was going to be like this social time. It was going to be so fun. And then like nobody would show up for social the social time. So I was like, okay, well that didn't work. So then I thought, well, maybe I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to go back to the original structure. And then it has to be a gradual, slow change, right? So I learned that. So our co-founder is Anne, and she comes to all of our board meetings, and she has always opened the board meetings with like a prayer, an activity, words of wisdom, stuff like that. And so I decided to keep that exactly the same, and then maybe add a little activity where we all go around and add to that. And then I put myself first instead of the executive director. So, and I did that because I wanted to include all of the board members. So somewhere under my report is, this board member giving this report, that board member reporting on this. So it's kind of like, yeah, Cheryl's stuff, but my stuff is really only as good as the people that are there with me. And that's the message that I was trying to send, is that, yeah, it's me, but it's not really me. It's really all of us. And so everybody has a say. And when it's my time, it's open discussion time. So that if somebody has a comment or a question about somebody's reporting, they have the opportunity to ask it and talk about it. Now, I do reserve the right to table it for executive session because I don't want things to get out of hand. Like some things get brought up you don't need to go into detail with. So I do reserve the right to say, let's hold that for executive session.
No, that makes sense. And I commend you for having an executive session. I think that's the smartest thing any board chair can do, and have it at every meeting so that you do have the opportunity to have those confidential discussions. So your ED is also the founder, is my understanding, or maybe that's evolved. So it must have evolved. So can you talk a little bit about that, then how you interact with the current executive director?
Sure. So the executive director, gosh, she's been there maybe since 2016, I think. Her name's Elena, and she is absolutely amazing. I mean, she comes with just an amazing wealth of knowledge. And I just, and her talk about enthusiasm and love for the mission and vision and all of that kind of thing. So she was the executive director when I came on. So, and she's high energy, and so am I. And sometimes when you get two high energy people, it's like lightning. And I think that what we understand is that, yeah, it might be that sometimes, but that's okay because, like families do that, you might have done that over Thanksgiving, a little lightning and thunder. We all come back together. One thing that I have for her that she has for me is a great deal of respect. Like, I know she is knowledgeable and she is capable and she is outstanding and she has the love, and I know that we're both there for the same reason. So it really, really works. In fact, one of our things was when we did our board meeting, what are you thankful for? And I said right away, I'm so thankful for Elena because, we can have an honest relationship. I'm not that kind of person that goes and talks behind your back. And I don't want her to be that. I don't think she's that way either. She's pretty honest. And so we're honest with each other and we're forthright with each other. And sometimes it's hard and sometimes you don't like what you hear, but it absolutely really helps with time management when you can be honest.
Oh, no doubt about it. It makes those phone calls easier too. So curious, how often do you interact with her?
So I also teach at the school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I see her every Tuesdays and
Okay.
Thursday, but we have a formal meeting every Thursday, every Thursday. And we'll preface it by an email. So we'll put the things in the email so we have time to read over it, so that during the meeting is very focused, very factual, and very fast. And then if we need more time, we always have more time. It's not that we want to just be quick and in and out. It's that we want to use our time wisely. Like you said, we're very small. Our staff is very busy. And so we have to use every minute wisely.
I like that a lot. And that's just going to attract more board members to your organization because everybody loves a very efficient process, whether it's, your meeting with the executive director and the board meetings themselves. So can you talk a little bit about how you all recognize staff and fellow board members? You talked a little bit, you wanted to be the fun person, have a fun board meeting, and that didn't work out so well. And I appreciate you trying something and then recognize, okay, we'll get there. It's just going to be a different way. But how do you celebrate? How do you recognize fellow board members?
I think that is where I am evolving. So Elena, her love language is gift giving. So she gives gifts all the time. All the time she's giving to the board. And so I just make sure she gets bonuses periodically.
There you go.
We have some great funders that help with salaries, specifically just salaries. And so, making sure that she gets what she deserves along the way is very important. And that, we have lunches and dinners and that kind of thing. And then at the beginning of the year, we always start out the year with, I take each board member to a lunch. And then I just sit and listen.
Good for you.
And hear what they have to say and what they think the vision of the organization should go. And I try not to give any input. I really do just try to sit and listen and take notes and buy them some lunch. And I totally stole that from Charlie. It's not my idea, but I feel like some of the best laid plans are, already laid. You just have to pick them up, get them to work.
Absolutely. And that relationship building with fellow board members is so critical. Oftentimes we don't take the time to do it because we're all really busy. They're busy. And we think, oh, we don't want to inconvenience them. But I tell you what, I encourage every board chair, when you move into that seat, spend time getting to know your fellow board members one-on-one, because the monthly meeting ain't going to do it, right? You're there, you're in, you're out. It's business. It's just to really engage them in one-on-one discussion. That's a game changer, Cheryl. So I commend you for doing that. I'm sure it's paid off in spades.
Well, one thing I'll tell you that has paid off in spades has been this podcast, because I send this to them all the
Oh,
time,
no.
all the time. I'm like, here, learn about this, here. Because one thing that you have to teach new board members is what the board role is,
Absolutely.
right? So we say we're active board members, and sometimes that means interacting with the school.
Mm,
And they want to go in and make changes in the school. And you're like, no. That's not our job.
that's right.
That's her job. That's not our job. So this has been great, sending that message to them
Well,
without me having to say,
without you
no.
having to say, yeah, well, it's true. And you got to love the interest in the passion for people wanting to help out in operations. But the reality is that's not the board's responsibility whatsoever, and can really cause, I'll say, damage, certainly some hurt feelings, damage, and confusion among staff. So to those board members listening, and obviously Cheryl's board's going to be listening to this because she's going to send this podcast to them. You're doing right by staying at the strategic level, and congratulations for doing that. Staying at that strategic level. That's really good. Cheryl, as we start to wrap things up, what advice would you give to an incoming board chair? What would you do differently? Or if you became a board chair again, what would you do?
Oh, gosh. Um, Structure time wisely. I never thought it would take as much time as it does. It literally is like a full-time job for me. And I used to, when I was the vice president, I could get everything done in one day. So Thursday was my day, and I would do everything on Thursday. And that just doesn't work when you're the board president, because you don't know what's coming up. And so it's a little bit of time every day. And there are sometimes where you have to say, no, not today. So if I started all over again, I think I would work with my time management a little bit better. And my advice to new board presidents is that it doesn't have to be 24 hours a day, all day. You'll burn out. And I really think a good board president who has a mission and vision for the organization, you don't want them to burn out. You want them to keep going and giving and moving forward. And if you throw all your hats into one basket and that's all you do, it's going to be hard and you're going to burn out, and you just don't want to do that. You have to have fun. You have to continue your life. You have to have things outside of the nonprofit organization.
Oh, I think that's great advice. You got to pace yourself. You're not going to solve the world's problems tomorrow. This is a long game. And to make sure you stay engaged and mission driven, you've got to really pace yourself. You're absolutely right. Cheryl Evans, the board president for Project Light of Manatee, and a longtime friend of mine. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate your words of wisdom and you sharing your experiences with us.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the work you do. I just don't know if you have any idea how many people that you touch and change lives in and of yourself. So thank you so much. I appreciate and being here today and being a part of it.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you, Cheryl. Well, we just heard from Cheryl Evans. Now this is Recapping with Reed. Reed's observations from this interview. And Reed, what did you pick up in our conversation with Cheryl?
So the first thing I picked up was when Cheryl talked about recruiting board members. You'll exhaust your circles, so you do have to get out there and meet new people, but also take a look at your donor list. Are there people who are consistent donors who might be interested in being board members? Or do you have past clientele that have graduated to a point where they could come on and be a board member?
Oh, good pickup. Yeah, I noticed she said that. I thought that was pretty insightful. Number two.
When you come on as a new board president, board chair, don't try to change everything at once, especially in the board meetings. Take it step by step, maybe change one thing a meeting, but don't try to change it all at once. It can cause some distraction or havoc.
Yeah, and some angst, no doubt about that. And number three.
It is extremely important for the executive director and the board chair to have a great deal of respect for each other. It's probably the most important aspect of the executive director board chair relationship.
Yeah. And even though she and Elaine, I'm sure, like each other, you don't have to like each other. You just got to respect each other and respect what each other is doing. So you're absolutely right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 3 really good tips from Reed from our conversation with Cheryl Evans. And I hope you will join us next week in the I-501CU, the podcast for nonprofit board members.